Hi everyone, I am going to go through chapter 9, the minerals chapter. You will notice in this chapter it actually does start off with a few slides about water, but I'm going to save that for later in the week when you guys are going to be looking at a video about water, the importance of drinking water and functions of water in the body. I'd rather that you watch that video and take notes. You can always use this PowerPoint as a backup for some information as well, because you will be answering some questions about water. So what I'm going to focus on today is basically the background of minerals, just like I did with vitamins, and you guys are going to fill out your mineral chart. I'm going to have it this week be not required that you complete it and submit it to me. I do hope that you go ahead and complete it on your own time though at some point. I will have you guys submit it though for extra credit, 5 points. So I just recommend everybody do it. That way you're going to get those 5 extra points in your grade book, and that can't hurt by any means, especially if you've missed something in the last few weeks, or if you maybe didn't do so great on a quiz that we had in class, something like that, or forgot a Connect homework or something one week. Those points will really make a difference. All right, so let me go ahead and get started with just the minerals, and I highly recommend that you keep something off to the side to take notes with, paper and pencil, or maybe you have your laptop, something, because again, don't forget to take notes as we're going through these every week. You will find these questions and you'll need this information on the final exam. So keep all that stuff, okay? Like I mentioned, the PowerPoint starts off with water, and I will let you go over that on your own time. I'm actually more interested in you watching the video about water that I posted for this week. All right, so moving into minerals. Here we go. So you'll notice that this is set up almost very similar to the vitamin chapter that we went through. And the reason is that, again, like with the vitamin chapter, I took this information actually from a different textbook that I taught out of a few years back, and I really liked the way it was organized in terms of the chart style. So if you look at the other PowerPoint that's listed on our Canvas site, you'll notice that the information is exactly the same as it is in this PowerPoint. It just looks a little different because it has more of an organized fashion. So just a little background about minerals. If you remember from chemistry, and I know you've all taken chemistry at some point in your life, that there was that huge, scary looking chart called the periodic table of elements. And that's basically what minerals are. In nutrition, minerals are specific single atoms that perform particular functions in the body. And if you remember looking at that chart, I think I actually have a picture of that chart here. You'll notice that in a lot of the, if you remember, a lot of the groups are all, there's a reason why they're in the groups, having to do with the amount of electrons that they have and how they pair up with each other. And that's basically what's going on inside of your body. So when you look at minerals on, let's say like a supplement bottle, it will never just say, for instance, calcium. It will always say calcium magnesium, or calcium phosphate, or calcium carbonate, because it needs another mineral basically to hook up with. So you don't need to know that for testing purposes, but that's kind of how they function. So going back here, you'll see the second bullet point, most carry a charge and are reactive because they have to have something else to couple up with so they're stable. And if you're taking chemistry right now, this probably makes a ton of sense because it's all fresh in your mind. And again, if you've taken chemistry before, it may jog your memory a little bit of how they have to stabilize with those electrons. So the body contains 40 or more minerals. However, only 15 of these minerals are considered to be essential, which, as you guys know, are required in the diet. So it's something that our body cannot make on its own. Okay, so just like with the vitamin chapter, and we talked specifically about this, that in order to preserve mineral content in food, you have to cook it a certain way. And the best way is basically going to be either like, if you're taking like vegetables, again, sauteing them, or if you are roasting them, grilling them is another great option. Steaming them is another great option too. You'll notice that if you boil a vegetable though, that's when you're losing all that mineral content. And dried foods actually retain minerals well too. So that's another good way to do that. The one thing you do want to stay away from though is the boiling, because that's where all that good nutritional value is going to be lost. Okay, so as you're going through here and you're having your mineral chart next to you and you're filling all this information out, you'll notice that there's 3 specific minerals that I'm going to start with here that have a specific disease associated with them. So the first one is calcium, and as you're going through calcium and you're filling out the different columns and the functions and the deficiencies, you'll notice that for calcium, the main deficiency symptom or consequence is actually something called osteoporosis. Now, if you remember when we were in class, the first week of class, we talked specifically about this. It literally means porous bones. And typically it happens in individuals that are elderly. However, we're seeing more cases pop up earlier in life now, which is kind of a scary fact. And we're seeing early onset osteoporosis in, not that old of adults, or maybe even 40s and 50s. So, this is something to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to tell you a little important information here about calcium that you should know for your life purposes, not just for this class. And that is that when we are building our bone, because that's one of its main functions, we are doing it during our adolescent years mostly. So what happens is after we get to age 20, that process is still maintained, but it's not happening as much as it once was in our adolescent years. When we get to age 30, it really slows down and even stops. So basically, whatever bone content you have in your body at that point is what you're going to have for the rest of your life. So you cannot go back after that age and start having a bunch of calcium in your diet and expect to build bone. So that's kind of the scary fact about bone building and calcium. So now calcium does need vitamin D in order to be absorbed. So they work in conjunction with each other. So you'll notice if you go back to your vitamin chart for vitamin D, a lot of the symptoms are similar and the functions are similar because they work in conjunction with each other. Now, the crazy thing about calcium is that, listen to this, our bodies have about 3 pounds of calcium in there, and 99% of that calcium is found in our bones and teeth. Only 1% is in our blood and other body fluids. So that means that our bones and teeth need calcium so badly, so much so that during pregnancy, when the fetus is growing inside the mother, that if the baby does not have enough calcium to create bone tissue, the baby will actually pull the calcium from the mother's bones and teeth. So it's pretty interesting. This is the only mineral that it can do this with. With iron, it can a little bit, but it's more of like the sharing of the blood supply for the iron. So, and when you go through iron here, you'll notice the functions of that. All right, so I do want you to know about osteoporosis. You can probably tell just by looking at these 2 pictures which one is the healthy bone and which one has the osteoporosis. You look over here, the healthy bone tissue, it's all nice and thick, and you can see, I mean, there's holes in here. There are pores, but you'll notice that it is solid and it's, unbreakable basically. If you go here, look at this. I mean, it's very fragile. It looks like it's broken right there. There's huge gaping holes in the bone tissue. So obviously this would be the osteoporosis. And you probably have seen elderly people hunched over like this. And the reason why this is happening is because osteoporosis typically affects the spine and also the hip area. So you may have heard of elderly people, and you may even know somebody in your family that has had this issue before where they are hunched over and they break a hip. And oftentimes what happens is, it's hard to tell because you can't tell in the moment, but oftentimes what happens is the elderly person will break their hip and then fall rather than the other way around, which is what a lot of people think is happening. Okay, I'm going to plug in my laptop here because it looks like it's about to die, so bear with me for a second. And the ethnic groups that are at higher risk are Caucasian, Asian, and Hispanic women. Typically it happens more in females than it does in males, having to do with hormones. So the point of this whole thing is, let me show you this next slide, is that it's the timing of the bone formation that I was mentioning to you guys. So I'm just moving my chair here. Okay. That it's happening between ages 30 and 40 is where that peak is reached. And that's what I was telling you about, how that's the age where it really starts to halt. So you really want to make sure that you're building all your bone between, those childhood and adolescent years to really pack it in as much as you can, get that peak bone density going. Okay, and like I mentioned before, it needs vitamin D in order to increase absorption. Okay, the next mineral that I'm going to point out to you that has to do with a disease or consequence of deficiency is iron. So iron, as you'll notice as you're going through your chart here, is that it's really important for the hemoglobin function in your body. And if you look over here, let me move my pointer. Right here, it transports oxygen as a component of hemoglobin in red blood cells. That's its main function there. And if you don't have iron, you are diagnosed often with something called anemia. And if you have anemia or know somebody that has anemia, it's actually not that uncommon, especially in women, because obviously if it's found in the blood, in the red blood cells, and women have a higher risk of getting anemia just because of their menstrual cycle. And you'll notice over here, if you look at the RDA for women, it's 18 milligrams compared to men for only 8 milligrams. So that's the specific reason, because of the menstrual cycle. Okay, so if you get anemia, typically you have some of these symptoms here, which is very fatigued, weakness, pale appearance. Hair loss is another thing that happens often. It's not listed here, but bruising can be another sign of anemia. And here are the primary food sources typically found in meat, red meat in particular. Are higher sources, but you can get it in other ways. Oh, I just wanted to point out here too, with iron, if you have vitamin C along with it, it actually will increase the iron absorption. Okay, so I do want you to know what hemoglobin is, like we just talked about. It's the iron-containing protein in red blood cells. Really important to know because that is what is basically oxygenating your body. It's what's transporting oxygen throughout your body. So if you do not have enough iron, it's going to affect your hemoglobin, which affects how you feel. You're going to be very, very fatigued. And here is anemia, the definition of anemia that I do want you to know about. So make sure you guys jot this down in addition to just knowing about iron. Okay, so it's basically where you are very, very, very tired, just pure exhaustion. You have those symptoms again of hair loss, easily bruising, pale appearance. Sometimes you have a rapid heart rate as well. Okay, and the thing about iron is that it's the number one nutrient that people overdose on, which is interesting. If you look at this picture, this is from the text, it shows you 3 different pills here. These are actually medications, believe it or not. But if I were in class and asking you guys, most students will say, oh, this looks like Tic Tacs, this looks like Skittles up here, and this looks like Smarties. And if you're a toddler, if you've ever been around a toddler, they put everything in their mouth. It's actually part of their milestones of development. And it's an oral exploration. And so if you have a toddler, you have to be very careful in putting all medications away, including vitamins and minerals, because some of these can be very dangerous to them. It says that a lethal dose for a toddler is about 3 grams, which comes out to be on average about 20 pills. And those will be very easily swallowed, and include quickly too, by some toddlers. Okay, and then the last one that I want to point out to you is sodium. Okay, so sodium does have another disease associated with it, and that is, as you may know, hypertension, which is basically also saying high blood pressure. And typically, and this is having too much sodium, by the way, in your diet, not enough, basically. So the main function of sodium are all of these right here, but the one that I really want you to know about, I would say, is basically this first one, needed to maintain the right acid-base balance in the body fluids. which basically means in and out of the cells. Sodium works in conjunction with water, which is kind of having to do with this next thing here. And then the last one, needed for muscle and nerve activity. Sodium is considered to be an electrolyte mineral. So you may notice when you sweat a lot, you sweat out a bunch of sodium. Sometimes if you've had a big workout, you may notice on your skin you actually have salt crystals sitting there afterwards after sweating, which is kind of interesting. So it would make sense then if you didn't have enough sodium in your diet that you would have muscle cramping going on, headaches, swelling again because it works in conjunction with water, weakness. And as far as food sources, basically everything here in America that's processed. If you really think about it, anything that's in those middle aisles of the grocery store is going to have, the high amounts of sodium in there. Okay, so what I do want to talk to you guys about is this first bullet point here, high blood pressure. And we do know by studies and by science, basically, that the more sodium that one has in their diet, the higher risk they have of getting hypertension or high blood pressure. And I know we mentioned this word before in our heart disease chapter when we talked about good fats and bad fats. But I do want you to remember what that is. Please make sure you jot this word down, hypertension, and how you would be susceptible to it. And the crazy thing is that a lot of people can't feel that they have hypertension. So it's kind of that silent symptom that people have for heart disease. And when you're doing your blood pressure, if you look at the readings that you get, basically anything that is above or exceeds 140/90 is considered to be high blood pressure. Anything that is under 120/80, that is normal. And anything in between is considered to be pre-hypertension. Basically, that is the red flag for you need to stop what you're doing, change your diet, start exercising so we can get this reversed before it gets to be a problem. So a lot of people have pre-hypertension and have no idea. So that's kind of the scary fact, okay? You have all probably done this before in the doctor's office. This is what it looks like when you get your blood pressure taken. I've also recommended to you all to go to like CVS or Walgreens or Target and sit in one of those little chairs and, get your blood pressure measurement. And as far as what causes hypertension, we mentioned too much sodium in your diet. That's a big one. All the things that you probably know already, basically the older you are with your age, the higher risk you are. If you have a family history, high sodium, low potassium, obesity, physical inactivity, excessive alcohol consumption, because that can actually pull too much of the potassium out of your body, as well as some other minerals like magnesium. And smoking causes all kinds of issues, as we know. But having also anxiety and stress can also lead to hypertension. That's more of a hormonal connection there. Okay, what I do want you to know, make sure you jot this down, is that one of the main things that they use to treat hypertension in terms of nutrition has to do with this DASH diet right here. I definitely want you guys to know this, DASH, DASH diet. Obviously, if you're moderating your alcohol consumption and you're lowering your salt intake and you're losing weight and activity and yoga and meditation, that's all going to be helpful. But this particular diet called DASH stands for, write this down, Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. This is going to be extremely helpful for everybody because they've done multiple studies on this particular diet, and it's basically, if you look at like the MyPlate, it's basically a MyPlate, but it emphasizes particular extra healthy foods within all those food groups. So not only are you meeting all your nutrient needs in terms of the food groups, and you're also doing a low sodium. Typically, they found that low fat foods can be really helpful for lowering your blood pressure as well. I do have to say, though, that this is talking about low-fat dairy. I do have to say that foods that are high in the good fats, which is not on this slide, can be beneficial. So you might want to jot that down. So good, healthy fats are going to be really important to include in your diet for DASH. Okay. If you're interested in looking at this particular diet, there's actually a website to go to. I would just Google DASH and it should pop up. It gives you sample eating plans, which are great to look at, but don't think you need to follow them to a T, just to get ideas. And then it also tells you about what DASH is and just other ways to lower your blood pressure. So, and they've found there's great positive results with this particular eating plan. And it's something that somebody could do for the rest of their life because it's basically all the food groups and it's how we should be eating anyway, but just emphasizing specific healthy foods. All right, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to let you guys take it over from here. As you're going through all the minerals, make sure to note that not all minerals are going to be on your chart. Like, for example, I'm looking at this first one, phosphorus. Again, not that it's not important. I just don't need you to know it for final exam purposes. Okay, so go through here, click on all of the different minerals. Here's magnesium. That is definitely on your chart. I know it's not in order for the mineral chart. That's okay. You're going to be jumping, around for this one. Zinc, make sure you include that. Fluoride is on there as well. Iodine is on there. Selenium is not on there. I know that's not on the chart. Copper is not on the chart. These are typically ones we don't hear about very often, and we need them in such minute amounts. Chromium, you may have heard of chromium in terms of weight loss. Okay, and then potassium I know is on there as well. Potassium is very important for your heartbeat and maintaining heartbeat. So that's something to note on there. Chloride is not on there. Let's see. Okay, I think that's it. So after you guys are done with that, if you submit that by Thursday at 11:59, you will get 5 points extra credit. So I highly recommend everybody do it. It can't hurt at all. It can only help. And then in addition to this assignment, we have the water assignment. So I'm going to have you watch a video and then answer some questions. If you need help with answering some of the water questions, you can use this PowerPoint that will help with some of the answers, as well as just referring to the video, as well as referring to your book, as well as referring to the internet if you need to get some extra information. And wherever you're pulling your information from, if it's not from these sources that I've given you here, like if it's from the internet, from a website, make sure you reference that information. That's really important to do. Okay. All right, guys, have a great week and let me know if you have any questions. I will be talking to you guys soon. Take care.